So let's begin. The power of web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. This is a quote by Tim Berners-Lee, who we also know as inventor of the World Wide Web. So, welcome to Being an Ally, Accessibility for Web Apps. My name is Tejas Submanyu, and you can catch me on Twitter at Tejas Submanyu. So, accessibility for web apps. We as developers often fail to acknowledge that web is a diverse place meant for everyone, not just for the physically able. There is a significant number of people who use the web but don't possess the same set of physical faculties as many others. Physical disabilities should not stop anyone from accessing the web and your apps, right? So that's what accessibility is all about. The intention behind this talk is to discuss accessibility, introduce accessibility for web applications, as well as to lay out some ways using which you can make your apps more accessible than they are already with minimal development efforts. So let's start with what is accessibility and why should you care? So accessibility, or often abbreviated as A11Y, if you check the dictionary, it's the fact of being able to be reached or obtained easily, right? But what does it mean in context of the web? So in context to web, it refers to the degree, features, considerations on your web apps that make the app more accessible and usable for your users with physical disabilities like motor disabilities or sight-related issues. Accessibility is all about enabling and empowering people with physical limitations to access your applications on the web. The web is fundamentally designed for all. When your web application meets this goal, it is accessible to people with diverse range of hearing, movement, sight, and cognitive abilities. Technology is a great enabler, right? Especially for the disabled. I think it is well within our duty as front-end engineers to make our apps accessible and open to all. What's more concerning to me is not that apps are not accessible, but the fact that most developers often have a hazy understanding of the term. The section who do not understand accessibility often don't take it as seriously because disabled users are minority users, right? Who nobody using a app is really disabled, right? We often take that as an assumption. It's time we let the myth of the minority user go, because the web is and should be accessible to all, and here are the reasons. So according to our 2017 WHO report, over 1 billion people in the world have some form of disability, right? So that's a major chunk of population. That's about 15% of the population. Not really a minority group, so to say. Especially when we put this in juxtaposition with the fact that the web is now preparing for its next billion users, right? We often hear Google and Facebook talk about where to get the next billion users from. So here they are. Ensuring accessibility is not just for the disabled, right? It is broadly observed that measures taken to ensure accessibility often enrich the overall experience, hence making it better for other users as well. So everyone wins. Data and figures on the disabled using the web are very hard to find, especially in the context of the subcontinent, which adds on to the mist of ignorance when it comes to accessibility. Accessibility is not just about disabled per se. As we age, our senses tend to get weaker, especially sight. It is quite bizarre to think that people who we casually call boomers today, born around 1950 and 1970, who would be about at least 50 years now, the very people who saw the invention of web, the people who invented the World Wide Web and laid ground for most of the tech we see today won't be able to comfortably use our apps. Or just think about a slightly old developer you in 2050. Finding it hard to read those small letters on the screen or navigating an app on that fancy app. Are we just going to ignore the difficulties faced by those elderly or temporarily disabled users as well? Are we just going to deprioritize a better experience for a 50 or a 60-year-old you? Suddenly accessibility makes sense, right? So, assistive technologies. Before discussing assistive technologies, let's discuss about the kind of disabilities and impairments we are looking. So impairments can be related to mobility. So some people might not be able to move. This might be temporary or this might be permanent due to some accident or something. Impairments can be visual as well. they can be hearing impairments, then they can be cognitive impairments. So coming back to assistive technologies, features, utilities which help people to access the web are called assistive technologies. Uh, Main examples which I'll consider in this talk are keyboard navigation, enabling users with situational, temporary, or permanent motor disabilities to use and navigate your applications using keyboard. That's keyboard navigation. Then comes screen readers. Screen readers are a utility software which can help with site-related issues in navigating and consuming the content of the web as they speak it out. The most popular examples are VoiceOver on Mac and NVDA on Windows. So Mac comes bundled with a lot of accessibility tools, VoiceOver and everything. But on Windows, you would have to go and install NVDA. So principles and guidelines about accessibility. Standard guidelines and principles for ensuring accessibility on the web have been put together by the platform and accessibility experts into the web, into a document known as WCAG, as we call it, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So WCAG contains a ton of recommendations, patterns, guidelines, and principles, which, if followed, make applications accessible to a wide range of disabled folks. WCAG is based on four, you can also call them four cornerstone principles, which are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Perceivable means the content/application should be perceivable by the user, right? Don't confuse perceivability with sight. Sight is not the only form of perceiving things. People with different disabilities might perceive things differently. So people with sight issues might not be able to see things, they perceive things differently. Operable, the content should be operable by the user, often interswitched with the term usability as well. Users with disabilities should be able to use, operate, and navigate your applications easily. Then comes understandable. The content application should be understandable by all. Experiences on the web should be clutter and confusion free. Then finally comes robustness. The content or your application should not break on different browsers or being consumed or when being consumed by using different assistive technologies like keyboard navigation or screen readers. Well, at this point, you might be overwhelmed or all of this might appear vague to implemented, right? So WCAG is a long document and discusses these points and associated patterns and guidelines in details. I'll drop a link to WCAG documentation in these slides. Another small checklist can be seen at WebAIM, which is web accessibility in mind. Great website, inspiration for web accessibility. And then comes a newer the ALI project or A11by project, however you want to call it. Also has a clear, concise list of processes that can be followed to achieve maximum accessibility on the web. So, as Sri used to say, right, life is tough, and so is making your apps accessible. So it's easy to work on more things and new features than work on accessibility. So what can you do? What are the small steps you can start implementing today in your apps to move towards a more accessible app and a more accessible platform for your users? Here are some small steps and conscious decisions you can take which will incur you minimum development efforts but can yield high accessibility. So semantics matters, right? We have heard it a lot of time. HTML semantics matter. Use of proper HTML semantics play a very big role in making your apps accessible. If you haven't heard about semantic HTML, here's a quick definition that semantic HTML or semantic markup is HTML that introduces meaning to the web page, rather just presentation. For example, P tag indicates that the enclosed text is a paragraph, or A tag indicates it's a link, etc. So this is both semantic and presentational because people know what paragraphs are and browsers know how to display them effectively. Use of semantic HTML elements can go a long way in helping you gain on accessibility. Since browsers attribute a meaning to these semantic HTML elements, keyboard accessibility is fulfilled out of the box in most cases. We often undercount the power of semantics as we never come across cool baked-in features they often provide. Use of semantics is not only about keyboard accessibility or about writing more meaningful markup. it enables browsers to optimize experiences with these elements on web as well as mobile and some other platform which might pop up tomorrow. So semantics matter. First point is I'd like to all of you to note down somewhere and write it on the walls is div is not the only HTML tag, right? I saw this on Reddit. I found it very funny. I'm in a div hell, which is actually what happens. Every element is being imitated by div on code basis. I've seen it, and that's not really nice. There are other elements apart from div, and you should use them. Even for grouping, there's section, there's span, there's a lot of things which you should explore instead of just going on and adding a div on your code. Then use heading and landmarks. They enable better efficient navigation with screen readers, right? Don't skip heading levels, add hidden headings if not present in design. So you might have a card-based design where you don't really have headings, properly segmented headings in your design. So you can add hidden headings if not present in design, and you can just move them out of the screen so the normal users doesn't see them. But for the users who are using screen readers, the screen readers will read those headings out and it will provide them a better and more efficient navigation using screen readers. So here's an example of what I meant by don't break heading tags or don't skip heading level tags. So we often see that we have a H1 and then suddenly we have a H3. Why? Because the subheading, the font size of the subheading and design look very similar to the one provided by H3. No, that should not be the case. If you want a smaller font, just apply a smaller font on the H tag. Just don't use a smaller heading instead. So why I'm saying so? Because skipping between heading tags usually breaks page structure and might confuse some screen readers. So use landmark elements, navigation, aside, main. HTML5 introduces a lot of landmark elements, which make the navigation using screen readers and keyboard really, really nice and efficient. People avoid them, but they offer better and efficient navigation using semantics built in. So if you have a general web application, you might have a header, then you might use a nav. So instead of using a div again for nav, you can use the nav tag, which comes with HTML because it's nice. Then you can have an article, then you can have groupings via section. And then for the side content, you can use the aside tag. And finally, you can have the footer, general structure, right? Then use the platform, right? Try to use the elements provided by HTML as much as possible. They have focus, keyword support, semantics built in. Just use the button, right? Instead of adding click listeners to div, a common accessibility anti-pattern is to treat a non-interactive element like a div or a span, which is essentially a grouping element, and adding a click listener to them, which handles a click event but does not offer focus via keyboard, support being disabled, support via enter or space keys to perform an action, announced properly by a screen reader as well, all of which is very much required for accessibility. So let's take a quick demo here, if I can. All right, so I hope you can see this. So these are two buttons, right? One is a div, one is a button. So both of them have on-click listeners attached to them, right? Both of them work similarly, but for a normal user, these might work, right? But these will also create problems when you want to add disabled state to the div. Then you would have to add extra styles and everything. Then you would have to add extra special handling code. But for a user using a screen reader or a keyboard who has motor disability, if you see it doesn't land on a div, right? It because I have some other things in the CSS as well. Why? Because I have removed focus on the button. So don't remove these focuses, because these enable the users using the keyboard to actually know what is accessible element and what is not. So if you see now that I've removed that CSS for removing outline, which we often do, the div is not really focusable via keyboard, right? But the button is. So if you are using a div as a button, you are essentially not letting the users using keyboard or screen readers to use that button, because they won't really know if that's a button or not. So please avoid such mistakes. And if you have to use a button, if you have to use a div at any cost, just add a role and a role of a button to it, right? So coming back to slides, just use the button, right? Don't go with divs and any other things. Button works. Understand links versus buttons. That's another thing I've observed, that people often use links where it's not required, and but instead of buttons. Uh, you have to understand the difference between links and buttons. Links are meant for navigation, while buttons are meant for actions. So adding a on click on a tag is considered accessibility pitfall, because links and buttons are read differently by screen readers again. So they might look same for a normal user, but for a user using a screen reader or a keyboard navigation, the screen reader will read a link as link and a button as an action, and the user using the screen reader will be confused. But we all know HTML element primitives are hard to style, right? And select. It's not for mere mortals, right? It's very hard to design HTML primitive elements except button and some others. So that is something that is slowly changing, definitely, but it is still early days. It is common to stumble upon a design which requires you to create custom components or use different HTML tags to imitate a functionality by another HTML element. That's where ARIA jumps in. So ARIA and accessible design patterns. So sometimes happening, most of the times now, that HTML elements aren't enough for fulfilling design requirements. I said use the platform earlier, but platform elements today are ugly out of the box, and in general are really hard to style according to the design needs. That's where Web Accessibility Initiative, ARIA, which is Accessibility Rich Internet Applications, you get good karma points if you remember that full form. ARIA is a specification which allows you to specify extra attributes on your elements, which instructs the browser to interpret the elements differently in the accessibility tree, right? So one of the most occurring problems with where ARIA fits in is custom radio buttons and checkboxes, right? All of you have worked on an application which requires a custom checkbox or a custom radio button. And it's really hard to style. It's almost impossible to style the primitive given by HTML. So if you have been asked to write a custom checkbox, you know it's not just possible with the primitive checkbox provided by the platform. We then resort to using some divs and before and after pseudo classes and spans, and some pseudo classes make that div appear and function like a checkbox, right? But that is just half the problem solved, because for screen readers that is still just a div, right? It will still read it out as a group, not as a checkbox. So it is not going to tell the user that it is a checkbox and what is its state. Is it checked or is it not checked? Which is a major pitfall for users on a screen reader or for users using a keyboard. Using ARIA, we can tell the browser to interpret these elements differently in the accessibility tree, and hence the screen readers will read them differently. Just add a role is equal to checkbox or ARIA check true to indicate that the role of this div is a checkbox or a button or whatever. So it basically is imitating a checkbox, and the checked state is true using these two values. Screen readers will now read these. If you add these labels, screen readers will now read these custom checkboxes as checkboxes, not as a group with their state, and not just speaking them out as normal divs, right? So that is really cool. So ARIA attributes help us modify the accessibility tree, but have no effect on the appearance or behavior of that element. So if you're thinking that ARIA might also help you change the behavior of that element or its appearance, no, ARIA won't do that. ARIA is specifically for accessibility tree, and it just actually performs surgery kind of operations in the accessibility tree, not the DOM. One point to note is that you'd still have to add keyboard support for these custom checkboxes. ARIA doesn't provide custom keyboard support out of the box for elements. So if you add a role, they might give keyboard support, but that's not pervasive. Right. So coming to the next thing, which is the art of labeling. So labeling is really an art. So CAG guideline 1.1 states that we should provide text alternatives for all non-text content on the screen, right? If you have seen the alt attribute on an image tag, that's an example of this. So labels can be, why labels? Why do we need to give labels to all non-text content? Because labels can be transformed into into various forms which people with disability can understand, like speech, braille, symbols, or a simpler language, right? If it's text, it can be transformed, but images and non-text content can't be. So the first principle of ORE, as I discussed above, was UI content should be perceivable by users, right? They should be presented in ways that all users can perceive them. The very first guideline states that we should provide text alternatives for all non-text contents. And how do we label the elements then, right? So you can just use a label tag, which comes within the HTML platform, or you can use the ARIA label, again provided by ARIA, to label the elements. Coming on to hover and focus states, right? We all have seen those fancy buttons with hover and focus states. So distinguished hover and focus states for control elements are very necessary because they help your users visually distinguish those interactive elements on the screen. If there are no hover and focus states, or you hide them, or you remove those outlines, focus ring is not visible. You are essentially making that, like I just showed that CSS class which was removing the outline. So that is basically making it inaccessible for a lot of users using keyboard, right? So because focus ring is basically a keyboard sort of pointer for those users using the keyboard. So you can use focus visible, which is still a working draft for CSS4, but it is available in Firefox. Finally, jumping on to colors and contrast. So modern web apps carry a lot of style and colors. The choice of colors is really important, and even more the contrast. So WCAG section 2.0 section 1.4.3 suggests some minimum contrast levels, which is that text and images should have a minimum contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1. So please don't use those fancy grays, because people really find them hard to use. And if it's large or bold text, you can decrease it to 3:1, right? And so here's an example. So these are increasing levels of contrast. So if you can see, if you use these grays on a white background, which is very prevalent nowadays. So as the contrast increases, they become better to read, right? And people with sight issues or elderly people will appreciate the more contrast, greater than 3.5 or 4 in this case, right? So the word John here in 4.6 is a great ratio to maintain. So there's a version 1.4.6 also of the guidelines, which is for content designed for elderly people or people with specific sight issues. Then you can take the contrast higher up to 7:1 for text and images, and large or bold text can have a minimum of 4.5 to 1. Right. Finally, jumping on to inert elements. So you have obviously designed website or seen websites with this sidebar, right? And if you tab it into the website, the focus goes onto those tabs. But what might happen is that that sidebar is often can be collapsed as well, right? So your keyboard focus is gone, but your focus should not go to off-screen elements, right? Because your user is tabbing and he doesn't see that focus ring anywhere because your sidebar is collapsed. So that's where inert comes in. Inert attribute you can add to elements for making browsers ignore those elements when not moving the tab focus to them. So inert also is a CSS4 working draft. You can use the polyfill. Polyfill has been available for long. Finally, the last point is third-party accessibility. So consciously choosing and using components and libraries which are accessible or have accessibility as one of their foremost concerns can help your application score more on accessibility, right? So I don't have a lot of time, so I'll quickly jump on to auditing and culture. So these are some auditing tools which you can use in your build pipelines or as part of your development to ensure that accessibility is maintained. So there's Axe, a famous tool, open source by DQ Labs. There's a super useful Chrome extension as well. Then there comes Lighthouse, which is built into Chrome now. So you can easily audit your apps time to time and see how your app scores on accessibility. And you can, it also mentions the issues, so you can fix them right away. Linting. So there are plenty of linter plugins available for pointing out accessibility issues with your code. If you are working with React, make sure to use ESLint plugin JSX A11Y, which is a really great plugin for pointing out accessibility issues on during development. Uh, how can you do a quick accessibility check? And this is for all, right? Not only developers. If you are a manager, if you are not really a tech person, still you can do accessibility audit and ensure that the app your team is working on is really accessible and considers about a broader range of people. So start navigating the app using tab key and keyboard. So you should be able to cover all the interactive elements on the page, and basically the website should be usable using keyboard. Check if focus is not going to elements which are hidden or off screen, like the sidebar example I mentioned. If the sidebar is collapsed, the focus should not go to it, because then your user is perplexed where the focus ring is gone. Simplistic page navigation using screen readers. So just go. Every developer should have a basic understanding of at least one screen reader, so that they can test their website on a screen reader, so that it basic sanity check on a screen reader. So page must be using appropriate headings and semantic HTML and all the landmark rules, which makes the navigation really cool for people, for really cool and efficient for people using screen readers and keyboards. Then finally check for colors and contrast, right? Some sections with low contrast levels might be difficult for users to read, and the Axe Chrome extension I mentioned earlier, or the Lighthouse will easily point it out. So finally, culture. Advocate accessibility. Accessibility is important because almost a billion, as I mentioned earlier, almost a billion users have some form of disability. Ensuring accessibility also increases the morale and builds a brand image that you really care about your users. And finally, we have to put a price on accessibility, right? We have to take it as all functional, non-functional requirements. Accessibility matters as well. Similar to performance, similar to testing, accessibility matters because it's really about if your users, if a section of your users is able to use your app or not. So right, and finally, prioritize UX over DX. So oftentimes we put the developer experience at first, right? We often want convenience for us as developers rather than thinking about the user experience. So yeah, put UX above DX. So a minor step we took forward in this regard was that there is a great session by Nikhil Satish, a fellow hasher on HU website, HU beta website, regarding accessibility. We had a special accessibility session for linkers this time around. So at least they know that there is something called accessibility out there and they have to implement it, right? So what are the inspirations on the web? So these are some great websites you can check out, and you can try using them with your keyboards, and you can try activating screen readers on them, and you will find the experience really cool. So Twitter is a great example. You can navigate the full website. You can use it without a mouse practically. YouTube is a great example. Again, WebAIM has really cool accessibility features built in. So these are some great examples if you want to check out on the web. All right, final remarks. So delivering considerate experiences on the web, right? So internet started out as a means of communications, right? Email and stuff, or so that you can apply your leave applications. But the fact that one person changes something at one place and it reflects on the other's computer is quite overlooked power of the web. The web has come a long way, and it's not just about communications or email anymore. We have been packing and delivering entire user experiences on the web for quite some years now. Entire storefronts have been entire experiences of stores have been delivered on the app on the web for some time now. Great experiences are delivered today, and there are multi-billion-dollar companies running on top of the web, just those great experiences, right? Netflix is a great example. Prime is a great example. So there are multi-billion-dollar businesses running on just the term web experience. So every time you crack your finger joints before writing a user interface, think about the user who is going to see and use this app which you are building, and will be awed by the considerations you have put to make their experience so nice and inclusive. And that delight is what keeps the music going, right? Yeah, that's all from my side. So you can get the slides and associated. I've written a blog post about this. So if you weren't able to catch this or write or like the text content much, you can visit this link and read the blog. It has all the content I've mentioned and more. So yeah, that's all from my side. I can take questions now.
Thanks, Tejas, for that detailed session. So we have one question from Shweta. Her question is, any tools to quickly know or test the existing application's web accessibility?
Yeah, so I mentioned a few. Axe is a great tool for Axe. Axe also has a command line utility. Axe is also a Chrome extension, and Axe is also a part of Lighthouse now. So if you go to your developer tools on Chrome, there is an audits tab down there. So you can quickly run a accessibility audit. So it will tell all the issues on your website relating to accessibility. There's a great project by Adi Osmani, who is an engineering manager on Chrome, called the Ally command line utilities. That's also great. You can install it and basically run on your website, and it will point out all the accessibility issues.